Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. I think this part of the introduction or the overview that we done of al-Aajruumiyyah, I didn't actually record, or I've recorded it, but I don't know what the recording is. So what we'll do, I'll record this part again, and as we're taking a day off from Medina Book 2 classes, then inshallah ta'ala we'll cover this. So we said al-Aajruumiyyah can be split into four main parts. The section where the author rahimahullah ta'ala speaks about al-kalam wal-kalima. Then section number 2 of the book can be categorized as al-i'rab, where he talks about what i'rab is, which words take i'rab, the different types of i'rab, or the different rulings within i'rab, and the signs of i'rab in detail, and then from another angle where he says al-mu'arabatu qisman. Then the third main section, you could say, is babul af'al, the chapter with regards to verbs. And then the fourth section would be bab al-asma, the chapter with regards to asma, the plural of ism. And if we were to look at the book in detail, then we can make it into 10 main points. So in general, 4 main points, those 4 sections that were just mentioned. In detail, then you can divide it into 10 main points. And the 8th or the 9th point would be babul af'al, which is what we're discussing now. And the 10th would be babul asma. But it's just to give an overview and an idea of what the book contains. So when a person goes to study it, even if they don't memorize it word for word, they have an idea of what's coming first, what's coming second, what's coming up, and so on. Okay. So in babul af'al, or in babil af'al, the author mentions that verbs and af'al are events that are connected to a time. So when we talk about a fi'l is an event in a time frame. And when we spoke about an ajrumiyyah, we say af'al or a fi'l is a word that has a meaning in and of itself and is connected to a time frame. So what the author does, he explains that verbs af'al can be of 3 types. Number 1, madi. Number 2, amr. Number 3, mudari. Not in that order, but I've just mentioned in that order because madi and amr have the same ruling of being mabni. As Ajrumiyyah is dealing with grammar, this is what he's going to discuss. So verbs are 3 types. Madi, which is the past tense, i.e. that the event occurred before the time of speaking. Al-mudari', which is that the verb or the action occurred at the time of speaking or thereafter. And amr is that it occurs afterwards. So madi was generally we say past, mudari' present, and amr is a command which will occur after the speaker has spoken. So he says al-madi. Al-madi, he says mabni. Al-madi, mabni is stuck. And what is it stuck on? Al-fath. It says here, stuck, mabni. So we said rules is either a word is either mu'arab or mabni. Mu'arab is that it changes to indicate function when an amil enters upon it. And the change can either be hidden or pronounced. Or the word doesn't change to indicate function when an amil enters upon it. And that's called mabni, it stays. Okay, what is it mabni upon? Al-fath. This is just to make it easier for the beginner. So for example, you have ذهب, سجد, طيب, ركع. So what is he trying to say? He's saying, okay, look, the fi'l madi is normally mabni upon a fath. When you go through an explanation, you're going to see that there's more details to that, but it's mabni. Either whether it's mabni upon a fath or other than that, it's mabni. طيب. Let's look at the other verb which is mabni, and that's the amr. The amr is the command. The command is also, what's the ruling? Is that it's mabni. And what do you say? It's mabni ala sukun. For example, this is general, just look, uktub. Uktub. Okay. You could say idhab. Idhab. So you see that normally it has sukun there. Doesn't change due to a factor coming upon it. So these two are mentioned together. Al-Madi and Al-Amr. Why? Because they're both mabni. But Madi is mabni on al-Fath, that's what he says in the book, and Amr is mabni upon the sukun. Okay, then that makes it a lot easier for us, because now, even though we said Af'aal, verbs are mu'arab, not all of them. Okay, it's the Mudari'. Oops, the Mudari'. The Mudari', what's the ruling for it? It's mu'arab. The Mudari' is mu'arab. Okay, then he goes on to mention for us, how do you know what a Mudari' is? He gives us an indication. He says, في أوله إحدى الزوائد الأربعة. At the beginning, في أوله إحدى الزوائد الأربعة. It says يجمعها, they are combined in your statement, or your statement combines them. يجمعها قولك أنيت. What does that mean? So at the start, في أوله, at the start of it, is one of these four extra letters, الزوائد. So what's the past tense? ذهب, for example, right? ذهب. Okay. Now, if you were to say أذهب, so there's an extra letter here, right? Okay, what are the four extra letters? 1, 2, 3, 4. You said four of them, right? So Hamza, Noon, Ya, Ta. All extra letters are Hamza, Noon, Ya, and Ta. Anaitu. They found in this word Anaitu. Okay, Hamza. We don't need to mention this, but we'll just mention this as we have some time now. Hamza is used for the mutakallim and mufrad. Noon is used for what? Mutakallim and jam. Good. So you say that. Ya is used for the ghaib. And ta is used for the mukhatab. Of course, there's an exception there with one of them, but don't worry about that for now. But what does that mean? So, for example, adhabu is first person singular. Nadhabu, first person mutakallim jam'. Nadhabu. But notice that these are the three letters and there's a zaid. So this is what he's saying. He's just helping us to, he's giving us a simple way to be able to look at how do you know this is a fi'l mudari'. So now we've identified what a fi'l mudari' is. Then he says, okay, what's the ruling? We said it's mu'arab. Okay, so what state is it? Remember previously we said that a fi'l can either be in a state of raf', is in a state of nasb, or in a state of jazm. So he says, وَهُوَ, he says in his book, al-Aajrruumiyyah, وَهُوَ, i.e., I've put this here, i.e. the fi'l mudari', and it is, i.e. the fi'l mudari' is marfu' abadan, always marfu'. So it starts off as marfu'. So if you say Muhammadun yadhhabu ila al-masjidi, yadhhabu, you say it's marfu'. You don't need to say it, there's a reason. It just starts off fi'l mudari' marfu'. Okay. Hatta, until, yadkhula alayhi nasib or jazm, until a factor which makes something nasb or jazm enter upon it. So he explained that to us. So what do we get from here? We know that the fi'l mudari is going to be marfu'. It's going to have the ruling of raf'a, unless something happens to it. طيب. Okay. What is it that can happen? Either nasib, an amil, a factor which makes it mansub, or a factor which makes it majzoom come upon it. So then the next step that he tells us is, okay, the nawasib. What are the factors that can make something a fi'l mudari mansub? And he says an-nawasib, and he explains to us that they are 10. Let me write that nicely. 10. Okay. So he says here, and these are the nawasib here: an, walan, wa idhan, wa kay, wa lamu kay, lam al-juhudi, ya ukhay, wa hatta, والجواب بالفاء والواو ثم أو رزقت اللطفة. So, ونسل the poem. Inshallah, I don't know if there's some, I don't think I've put it on this PDF. Anyway, so these make a fi'l mudari mansub. يذهب لن يذهب. So, يذهب لن يذهب مرفوع, and the sign is a dhamma that is on the ending. But if you have lan, then you're going to say يذهب. Why? Because of lan. Okay, so you say fi'l مضارع منصوب بلن, for example, وعلامة نصبه الفتحة. It's منصوب because of lan, because lan is one of the signs. Right? Okay. And then he also tells us the jawazim. He says the jawazim are 18 plus 1. 18 plus 1. And you might say, okay, why would you say 18 plus 1? It's going to be clear. Why don't you say 19? Well, there's a reason. Okay, so it says lam, walamma, wa'alam, wa'alamma, walamul amri, wad-du'a. That's 1. Lamul amri, wad-du'a. Okay, that's 1. So that's point number 5. Wala fi nahyi wad-du'a. 6. Wa in, 7. Wama, waman, ومهما, 10. وإذما, وأي, 12. ومتى, 13. وأيانا, 14. وأين, 15. وأنا, 16. وحيثما, 17. وكيفما, 18. Alhamdulillah. And then وإذا وإذن عفوا وإذن في الشعر خاصة, but only in poetry. That's why we say 18 plus 1. But only, he says here, في الشعر خاصة, 19, or you could say the plus 1. طيب. So for example, and you all are aware of this, يلد. يلد. هو يلد. He gives birth or he begets. But when we put lam in front of it, okay, as we know in Surah al-Ikhlas, lam yalid. We put sukun on the ending. Why? Because it's in a state of jazm. Its ruling is that it's in a state of jazm. It's majzoom. Why? Because of lam. And what's the sign? The sukun. So from yalidu, it became to yalid. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. You say yuladu normally, but because of lam, it becomes yulad. So now, that's the chapter. Okay, that's it. But the point is that now, here, I'll mention this just to make it so we don't think that, oh, khalas, we know the book, or we know the book. So now, for example, what about when it says it's mabni al-fath? What about when you have dhahabta? How can it be mabni al-fath and there's sukun? So the scholars, they discuss this. Is it that there is a fatha muqaddara, or is it that you just say it's mabni al-fath in general, but there are some exceptions and this is mabni al-sukun? Okay. Likewise, we're going to discuss here. We're going to discuss why have I separated this. There's a reason. I'll leave it for you guys to do homework. Also, why there's a separation here. There's a reason. We put that there for a reason. Are you? And then they discuss, okay, what does each one indicate? And there are certain rules for them and so forth. So if you use certain nawasib or jawazim, then there are etiquettes, or there are ways that they have to be used. You can't just use them any simple way, okay? So they discuss that in the explanations of the book. So it's still a lot for a person to do, but they should have this mind map in their brain so they can organize the knowledge. It gives structure to their knowledge. So even if they haven't memorized the book word for word, they have an idea of what this chapter contains, and the person is able to remember these points. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us success in this world and the next. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. If you have any questions, you can ask inshallah.